Hi all, this is Paperback Thoughts, and today we are going to discuss How Police to Kill a Mockingbird. It was 4 years ago that I picked this one up for the first time, and at that time I was new to the genre of literary fiction, or generally I never did read anything which was regarded as classic. So this book obviously was a complete shift from the likes of murder mysteries of Agatha Christie or thrillers of Sidney Sheldon that I was more used to. I enjoyed this one from the very first page, and there were parts of the book that I loved so much, and I plan to revisit later. And 4 years down the line, and a couple of rereads later, the latest reread was a month ago. I'm here to share my thoughts on To Kill a Mockingbird. Before we get more into the plot, I would like to share some interesting facts about the book. This book has some autobiographical references from Harper Lee's childhood. Even though the book is not 100% autobiographical, there are instances and characters which she draws from her childhood. The book was published in 1960, which went on to win the Pulitzer Prize in 1961, and it was huge for a debut novel. And Harper Lee was completely, an introvert as a person. She hated the spotlight, and she went into hiding soon after the publishing of the book. And also interesting to know that in 2015, that is 55 years after she published this one, she publishes her second book, Ghost at a Watchman, which was interestingly written before To Kill a Mockingbird. And another thing that completely caught me by surprise is that this book was rejected by almost 10 publishers. After the final publisher selecting it, they insisted that Harper Lee rewrote it a couple of times. Coming to the plot of the story, I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. The story is set in the fictional county of Macomb, Alabama, and is narrated by a 6-year-old Jean Louis, who is nicknamed as Scout. And the events in the story happens from 1933 to 1935. Scout lives with her older brother Jem and her father Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch, even if you haven't read this book, you might have heard about this character because he is considered to be one of the best literary characters ever to be written about, because this character holds moral values beyond humanly possible sometimes, and it is not uncommon for a reader to draw a life lesson or two from Atticus Finch once you're done with this book. The first part of the book largely deals with Scout, Jem and Dill. Dill is their friend who visits them every summer. Their friendship and the relationship between Atticus and his children, and how Atticus acts as a window, as a link between the outer world for these children. And also about this neighbor, Boo Radley, who's a reclusive neighbor, which the children are equally fascinated and afraid of the same time, and the adventures that they get into and try to bring Boo out of his house, and the plans that the kids come up with are an absolute pleasure to read. The second half of the book turns into more serious issues like rape and racial discrimination. It is in the second half of the book where a black man is accused of raping a white young woman. Atticus Finch is appointed by the court to represent this accused black man. Many of the Macomb's people disapprove when they realize that Atticus is going to defend the accused to the best of his abilities. And Atticus Finch and the children are soon branded as nigger lovers in the society by a society who wants to lynch Tom Robinson, the black man, instead of giving him a fair chance of trial. Towards the end of the book, the reader gets a chance to get a glimpse into the racial fabric of America in the 1930s, and how some of the heartbreaking events which happen throughout the book shapes the lives of people in Macomb. And as the book move on towards the climax, there are a lot of surprises on the way. And even though the book doesn't end on a happily ever after note, I found the ending to be very satisfying. One of the exciting part of reading classics is that they offer a lot of life lessons and philosophies that you can take with you. And this book, To Kill a Mockingbird, is no exception. And out of the many life lessons that I have got from this book, I have chosen 3 for this video. The book highlights that it's a sin to kill a mockingbird, and of course, in the wider scope of the book, the mockingbirds are represented by the black community in the 1930s. It simply translates to never hurt somebody who's innocent based on your belief systems or prejudices. Simply live and let live. Number 2 is this quote from Atticus, which says that the one thing that doesn't abide by the majority rule is a person's conscience. So it's very easy to resound your opinion to what the world wants to hear, and to go by the majority opinion. It's the easiest thing you can do in your life. So always do what appeals to your conscience rather than what the majority is going by. And the last life lesson I want to leave you with is, you don't get to know somebody unless you walk in, get into their skin and walk around. So I and you probably at some point in our lives are guilty of making too quick of a judgment, right? By the time you get to know the actual truth about the situation or a person, your judgment is already out there, and the damage is done. I don't think you ever will be in a position to understand all the things that the other person or the situation has been through to make a judgment of it. Okay. With that thought, I conclude my thoughts on one of my favorite books, To Kill a Mockingbird. I hope you pick it up, and I hope that you enjoy as much as I did.